And we are back, and it is time for the ElseViews. This is the section of the show where we talk about the TV shows or the movies or video games or music or whatever we have been, that we want to go in depth on, that we've basically been nerding out over. And Corey, I'm going to tag on yours and also add something else. But before we get to that, I'm going to do mine because I'm selfish and greedy and I want to do it. The show I'm going to talk about is one that I was talking about before the show, before we even went live on the stream, and this is the Keith and Paddy picture show. And it's Paddy, Paddy, as in he is Irish and his name is Patrick. But this show it airs over in the UK, so this is a little mini Pod Save the Queen for you. And the show it airs over on ITV, and this is Keith Lemon and Paddy McGuinness creating half-hour versions of movies, but doing it in a really funny way. They have aired 2 episodes, and I before I go any further, I have to give credit to my friend from my Minecraft community, Weasel Words, for actually reminding me of the show because I had forgotten about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, VPN. Hey, I'm in England. Let's watch the show. But they've aired 2 episodes so far. The first one was Dirty Dancing, in which they had, because one of the great things about the show is the cameos in there from other, famous people. Typically they're British famous people, but with this one, it's one that they're people that, everyone will know. So for Dirty Dancing, they had John Barrowman come in as the choreographer, because they talked about and gave some interesting facts. Like, I didn't realize with Dirty Dancing that they had never come up with the Dirty Dancing dance until they had brought Kenny Ortega in there, and he got the Patrick Swayze, and I'm blanking on baby's name, in a room, and they just said dance.
Jennifer Grey, I believe.
Yeah, Jennifer Grey and stuff like that. That episode is hilarious because you see Keith Lemon playing baby in here, and he has this big fake prosthetic nose because this is, I guess, Jennifer Grey before she got nose surgery. She got the rhinoplasty
Correctly,
and all that. And then Paddy McGuinness, who is playing Patrick Swayze. There's an article that talks about the show from the mirror.co.uk where they play a clip, and it's the scene where baby and Patrick Swayze's character meet for the first time, and they pause because they'll do this thing like they'll pause, or the director will say cut when they're recreating the movie, and they go, Keith goes, so Paddy, you how did you prepare yourself for the role of Patrick Swayze's character? He's like, well, I just watched the movie and I noticed that he just shook his head a lot, so you just see him in there just like, and he's wearing a wig, and like Patrick Swayze's hair, and he's just sitting there shaking his head all the time like he's got Tourette's or something, and it's the funniest thing that I've seen. The second episode is Ghostbusters, and he's a professional soccer player, or former professional soccer player. Now he's a commentator, I believe, on ITV or Sky Sports for football over in the rest of the world, and named Chris Akabusi. He plays Ray Parker Jr. in the Ghostbusters one, but he keeps coming out anytime the music's playing. So like they do the beginning, do the intro, and then he comes out when there's something strange. It's like, no, Chris, no, mate, you gotta wait. You don't come in until the end. And then he comes in, the song's not even playing. He's just like, they say Ghostbusters, like, when there's something strange. It's one of the best scenes, the best little bits, running gags they have going throughout the whole thing. They even do this debate over practical effects and CGI, so much where they have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man as an 8-bit character when they get to the big climactic scene. But honestly, the whole this whole series is just brilliant in the fact of how they do this, balance humor with recreating movies. Like some of the shows that they've got coming up include or episodes. They have a Rocky episode. They've done I think there's gonna be 6 altogether for this series, and I'm like, okay, can it be Saturday so I can watch this, please? Because it's just funny entertainment out there. All right,
it sounds a little bit. There's a movie that I actually have in my DVR because I've been wanting to rewatch it again. Be Kind Rewind with Jack
Yes,
Black and
yes,
Mustaf.
yeah. It's similar to that, except for it
There's not
skews.
the overarching premise that we have to do this because we have to
Yeah,
save the video store.
and it skews more towards like documentary. B actually compared it when I was telling him about it to documentary now, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, it's similar to that, except for the fact that they're not recreating a documentary, like spoofing a documentary or a style of documentary in a whole new way. So like what was it, the Nanook of the North was based off of this one documentary and all that. Like they did the was it like Weeds episode or whatever that was the Vice, like the playoff of Vice documentaries and all that, but it's very similar. So that is the Keith and Paddy picture show. You can catch that Saturday nights if you're in the UK. Saturday nights at 9 p.m. I believe. It airs after Ant and Dec over there, or Britain's Got Talent, one of those shows. But yeah, and you can catch it on ITV.
Is there any rumors of it coming to the States, or is it strictly going to be a UK thing that you have to find your way to that content?
I would love for it to come to the States. I have no idea if it is or not. It would actually do really well on Comedy Central as opposed to like BBC America, just with how a lot of the humor is. But I don't know. I don't think there is. I think it's still, because it still is very early on, and a lot of the humor is like that I get with it is because I watch Keith Lemon on his other two shows that he has on ITV, and Keith Lemon is a character himself, but his show Celebrity Juice and Through the Keyhole. So it would be a little tricky, and it also beats pointing out the copyright landscape here might be, it could be a little counterproductive and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not 100% sure on if it could even come over, but I don't know. I don't know how big of a hit it would be because of the fact that a lot of people don't know who Keith Lemon is here in America.
I don't think it's that so much, but it seems to be that if it's so far the two examples you've given, it's spoofing very well-known American movies, that might be what gets it attention, more than the fact of who the people who are doing it are.
Yeah, and there's I'm remembering a couple other movies, Jaws, Rocky. There's a few other ones, but it's really short, 6-episode season, or series as they say over there. But yeah, that's enough talking about this. Let's get into your nerding out.
I don't really have a lot to say about it. I was gonna skip nerding out myself this week, but
for the second week in a row.
Well, first of all, I am quite popular. Second, I am trying to get through something else that I need to review for another show. Not trying to make it sound like it's not something that I'm enjoying. It's just, it's more taxing as far as the time and effort that goes into it. So Gregor's going to push me on this. The thing that we're going to talk about is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So I know we say at the top of the show, we spoil things. If you have not seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 yet, you should probably skip over this part because I assume that there's some stuff that we're just going to have to say. But in general, now you've seen this and you saw it and you were going to talk about it last week. And
yes,
because I hadn't, you were nice enough to skip over it. So give me your thoughts on it.
So I think this is the best Marvel movie to date. I know that a lot of people think that's a bold statement, but the humor in here, the way sound always plays big with me on movies. The way that the soundtrack, which I purchased, like physically bought, dead trees and oil, and purchased and was rocking out to it this week going to and from work. And church and stuff like that, just playing songs that I made a playlist for, leading up to it and all that stuff, but they fit so well together. Like, this isn't to take away from Guardians Volume Awesome Mix Volume 1, but it feels like they had a little bit of problems getting some songs that like that James Gunn would have wanted more with Volume 1 because of how well the songs work with the story in Volume 2.
Well, one of the things that I know that James said is in choosing music for Volume 2 is he went to the fans and he said on social media and other places, he's like, what songs do you think would be on Awesome Mix Volume 2? And in particular, one of the songs was a song he had never heard before. It was something that someone sent in, and he had no familiarity with it at all. But he listened to it. He's like, this is actually really good. I can see a scene where this would go. I'm going to utilize this. I don't know that I necessarily agree that the songs chosen for the first one were not his first choices, or that the songs chosen for this one were because they had a bigger budget or anything. In fact, they spent less on the budget on this movie overall than they did on the first one. But a lot of that probably came down to effects and because contracts were already signed and that sort of stuff. I noticed the use of the music differently in this one than I did the first one. Some things like the openings, not the opening, but the scene where the Guardians first are shown and they're fighting the giant creature and Baby Groot plugs in the amp and does the whole dance scene, which was reminiscent of the scene in the first movie with Star-Lord doing it, except much more intense, a bigger scene and everything, and just because it was fucking adorable because it was Baby Groot. Also, it wins in my heart because it's ELO, and I'm a huge ELO/Jeff Lynne fan. That was amazing. But I noticed scenes also where they replayed the same song more than once. That Fleetwood Mac song played a couple of times.
Yeah, that's the one part where, like, because of how my brain works and a lot of people's brains work, where, I can, with hearing these songs, and it's like I can tell when I'm going through, like, okay, Fox on the Run isn't in, and they even have an asterisk on here, it isn't on in the movie and all that, but it's the one that's used in all the promos, and but then you get, like, Lakeshore Drive and Mr. Blue Sky, and all these. It's until you get to track 10, Wham Bam Shangalang, where it's like these songs that come afterwards. I'm like, I think all these are credit songs that are on here. Surrender by Cheap Trick, Cat Stevens, Father and Son, Flashlight by Parliament, and then
actually I remember all of those from the film. The only one I remember distinctly from the credits, I think, was the one that has David Hasselhoff rapping in it.
Yeah, Guardians Inferno.
Right. But all the other stuff I think made it into the actual movie. And there was songs that probably got used that weren't. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Did the movie feel a little long to you?
Not in the sense of I'm getting bored, but in that the typical 3-act structure wasn't, like, strictly adhered to.
I had a little bit of problem with pacing. I had a little bit of problem. One, it felt long in points where it didn't necessarily need to be long, although I think all the scenes were done well, and I don't think that there was anything where it was story that didn't make sense or need to be told. It wasn't necessarily that I thought anything had to be cut. It was just that it felt longer than what it needed to be. The first one was so action heavy, and you just were kind of pulled through the whole thing very quickly. And this one, part of it was probably because they separated the characters more than once. And a lot of it hinged on Mantis needing to tell them what was going on with Ego. And the stuff between Gamora and Nebula and the stuff with Rocket and Yondu. It was just a lot of things that were trying to establish the same stuff of trust and family and things, while we were already supposed to be dealing with the story of Ego and Star-Lord and them. And it seemed that when the stuff with Star-Lord actually happens, it didn't have as much impact because we had been getting so pulled around to these other things at the time that it didn't work for me as well. Yeah. I really like the movie. I don't want to act like I didn't enjoy this movie a lot, because I absolutely do. And it's certainly not the second movie slump that, say, Iron Man 2, a lot of people feel didn't work as well. Thor 2, I think, is, as much as I enjoy it's for me, it's at a level that Thor 1 was, but it also, neither of those are super high on the list. I like both films, absolutely, but I can see that the complaints of Thor is like they just kind of brought us more of that, and they involved Jane too much.
Yeah.
There was parts of it that I felt maybe there was so much going into this that some of it could have been trimmed away. And when you want to talk about excess, you can get to things like there are 5 credits / post-credit scenes, but I loved all of those scenes, so I wouldn't ask for any of them to not be there. It's just, as much as I love this movie, I can probably pick at it a little bit if I choose to.
Yeah.
I don't see it as the best Marvel movie myself personally, but I still see it as a very great example of what Marvel can do, especially when they're not tied into the Avengers stuff and everything else, where they all have to kind of mix together. But it's interesting because the next thing we have for these characters is going to be when they tie in with the Avengers stuff and they all mix together.
And it's I think the reason why I like this movie the most, and why I say it's the best Marvel movie that, in my opinion, is because this isn't based off of any storyline. Like, you don't have, you're like, okay, here's, this scene where, the scene where Iron Man and Hulk fight, and with, Iron Man's using the Hulkbuster armor, comes from, this part here, or, we're going to use, very loosely, the Civil War story from the comic books for Captain America Civil War, all these other little things. It's just James Gunn, I think it's Nicole Perlman, it's just the writers, producers, actors all making a good movie is where it really pays off for me.
Actually, James Gunn is the only one who's listed as written by, other than the creators from the comics who created the characters. Okay. All get ratings, which I think is great. Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning, Steve Englehart, Steve Gann, Jim Starlin, Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, Jack Kirby, Bill Mantlo, and Keith Giffen all get writing credits on this film because of the characters they created for Marvel that show up in it. I think that's fantastic. I am deeply encouraged by Marvel doing that now.
The other part I like about this is the Easter eggs, is the fact that there's so many little Easter eggs in there. I did not recognize Michael Rosenbaum at all in here.
Yeah, I didn't either. But
yeah,
that's kind of the important thing, is in that character, you're not really supposed to.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even so much like Ving Rhames, like, oh, hey, it's Ving Rhames. Sylvester Stallone.
Right, because he looks like Ving Rhames. They don't actually dress him up at all like Charlie 27, which is who I'm assuming he was playing.
Yeah. But it's even with other characters that are in full body makeup or CG, and you hear their voices, like, oh, I didn't recognize his voice either. And this is coming from a guy who was a fan of his on Smallville, was a fan of his with Impastor, watched that movie that he was in with Harlan Williams, where he played, where he cross-dressed to join a sorority, and the one dude from Seventh Heaven. And so it's like, I would have picked up on his voice, but I'm like, wait, that was Michael Rosenbaum? But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It also got me excited for Thor Ragnarok. And I think it's partially because they played the trailer leading in. They did it at my theater. And so it was just like, hearing everyone else laugh at, yes, he's my buddy from work moment from the trailer. Because it was that same trailer. But then also later learning that Mark Mothersbaugh is doing the music for Thor Ragnarok.
I had no idea who that is.
Mark Devo.
Oh, okay.
He's dude from Devo. He also later did the music for Rugrats and has done other movies and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm like, wait, what? And you're not the first person, so I'm not going to hold it against you for being like, wait, who's Mark Mothersbaugh? But I typically would go, when a problem comes along, do you know what you got to do?
I usually give it a hand job.
So you whip it, right?
That's exactly what I just said. What, are you not listening to me?
But that's usually what I would say. Like, someone would go, I'm like, you fucking young jackass. Or, you get it, right? Now you get it. Yeah. And he's like, oh, what's the name? Devo. Oh yeah. Like, there was one or two things that would happen. I'm like, it's okay. I know I'm really obscure with a lot of things sometimes, but I don't care. But yeah,
I have to say, my wife and I went and saw this. We both had a really great time. She definitely enjoyed it. It made me happy. That's what most of all. I leave out with the theater with my wife, who sat through all the closing credit stuff and everything and didn't complain about, like, I didn't get up when the fucking lights came on or anything. That's an amazing time for me. My wife and I have sometimes very different opinions of movies, and certainly she's not in all the Marvel stuff. So it's a real treat to be able to see something like this with her and have her excited to see something like this in general. It was a very good film, and I love what James Gunn has been doing, and I'm glad that he's coming back for the third one, and I hope he gets to be involved in more of the creative stuff in the Marvel Cinematic Universe overall. But I'm also glad when he's doing his own things and creating stuff that's not a part of that, because he does have creative ideas that he gets to still do and and people are going to look at it more. It's kind of like, well, you know, once you do this big superhero movie, Sam Raimi, you get to go and do this other thing with a little bit more of a budget now than you would have had before. People recognize you from that sort of stuff. Peter Jackson, Guillermo del Toro, all these people who are like, yeah, I've got my big moneymaker over here, and now I can go and make my own stuff and have a little bit more of a bump as to how much I can actually play with it. I think that's fantastic.
Yes. And the final thing for me to say is I am Groot. And go buy the CD, because the CD, I really love the soundtrack.
Or buy the Doritos package that plays the music.
Did you see the teardown of that?
No.
The Verge got a hold of one of the bags because I guess they only sold it on one day. It's a full-size bag of Doritos. You get a snack-size pouch.
That's fine. Would not surprise me if you open that thing up and there's an actual Zune inside.
No, it actually has less storage space than the Zune. It's a 512 megabyte SD card.
So not a lot.
Micro SD card. Yeah. But yeah, that's going to be it for the ElseViews. We will be right back.